Black Myth Wukong is taking the gaming world by storm. We've got updated sales numbers that show that this is a bona fide mega hit. In addition to the problem, the biggest situation with Black Myth Wukong on the PlayStation 5, for those who want to know about what version to get and what is going on, we've got more details here. So before we get into any of that, what's good everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, and click that notification bell to get my RPG videos and more first. And let's go ahead and jump right into the situation with Black Myth Wukong. We've got an update on these sales numbers because it was crazy just yesterday, as of the day that I'm recording this video. We got news that the game sold around 4.5 to 5 million, but hey, that's old news. We've got new information, and this is probably going to be outdated by the time that we get the next sales update. But Black Myth Wukong has sold 10 million copies across all platforms. The data is as of 2100 Beijing time, August 23rd, 2024. They state this on the official Black Myth Wukong game Twitter account, saying thanks to all the players worldwide for your support and love. Have a great gaming weekend. Hashtag Black Myth Wukong. You see it here. We got some extra data as well on here. 3 million concurrent players across all platforms. So game science is definitely racking up the dollars when it comes down to it, and for good reason. Black Myth Wukong is a big Unreal Engine 5 game that is absolutely not perfect across all platforms, and we're going to get into that, especially the truth with the PlayStation 5 version of the game. But at the end of the day, it spoke to what people kind of want to see in games. You've got great visuals, you've got really cool gameplay, you've got a dope looking main character, you've got cool combat and upgrades. It's something that people just love to see when it comes to gaming. And in this Dark Souls / Elden Ring renaissance of gaming that we've seen, this came out at the right time, right place. I think it was just perfect. Everything was put together just right for this game, putting the Chinese game industry on notice, showing mobile developers you can do a bit more if you put some more time and effort into something overall. So that's awesome for game science. It's cool that they've been able to sell that, and obviously the employees, all that good stuff. Hopefully they take that money, reinvest it, make sure everybody got, plenty, whatever the case is. Let's just hope that it goes back into the employees and to reinvest into making something even greater if there is a sequel to Black Myth Wukong, or even something else if they want to do like a whole new IP or something completely different. Now, let's get into some of the situation with the PlayStation 5 version, because as many of you know, but if you don't know, we've got information on the PS5 version versus the PC version. Now, before I wanted to shower this game with praise with my own hands on, I've simply just put the surface level. I put a few hours in on the PlayStation 5 version, and I thought it was okay. I thought it was solid overall, based off of what I said in my previous video. But the more that I played it, the more that I felt like, man, there's an issue here. Now, Digital Foundry did put out their video, which I did talk about, that went into the whole 30 frames, 60 frames frame generation on performance mode in order to get it to play at 60, but there's something off with that. When you play, it just feels off, which they did explain in their video. So I wanted to get into what they said, because this is the same problem that I was having with Black Myth Wukong on the PlayStation 5. And when I switched over to play it on the PC, which you guys will see my actual gameplay footage from the PC version of the game coming up, I was blown away by how much better it felt to play, because there was an issue. Whenever I played it on PS5, it was okay, but there was an issue. Shoutouts to Push Square. So they start off by saying earlier this week, we reported the PS5 version of Black Myth Wukong and how it seems to hold up from a technical perspective. The impressions were based on roughly 6 hours of playtime, and our main takeaway was that while none of the game's 3 graphical modes are perfect, the performance mode in particular seems fairly solid, offering gameplay at 60 frames per second or near enough in exchange for a lower resolution. Now, this thought process was pushed by so many of the hardcore PlayStation fans on Twitter, talking about how it runs at 60 and showing these frame rate tests from other places, and people just putting up all sorts of stuff saying that it's perfect, everything's fine. And I looked at that and I was like, okay, well, maybe it doesn't quite feel right for me all the time, but hey, look, they're trying, and overall it's smooth enough. You can kind of feel the smoothness, but there's definitely problems when you're fighting some of the faster enemies, some of the bigger bosses, and it just feels a bit laggy, or it feels a bit off overall in comparison to something like Devil May Cry that runs at 60 frames or above on PlayStation 5, or something even like Bayonetta on the Nintendo Switch, or other games that you've played, other action games. It just didn't quite feel right. Now, as it turns out, Digital Foundry talked about this more and identified an additional performance mode problem that we never quite picked up on. Now, according to the analysis, Wukong actually makes use of frame generation tech in order to close in on the 60 frames per second target. Basically, frame generation does exactly what its name suggests. It artificially provides more frames per second to give the impression of a smoother visual experience. However, in Wukong's case, the frame generation results in increased input lag. So there you go. You get a smoother looking type of game, but the input lag is there, and it's something that I noticed instantly when fighting some of the tougher bosses in the game. Now, essentially, you're playing the game at around 30 frames per second. It's just that the frame generation makes it look like you're sitting pretty at 60 frames per second. Inevitably, this means that you'll run into moments where you swear you pressed the dodge button or hit L1 to take a sip of your health restoring drink, but the input simply doesn't register. This happened to me at the beginning when I was fighting that big-headed dude at the beginning little side optional thing. Like, it was really kind of laggy at times. There was absolutely input delay that did not feel like a smooth 60 frames per second in a game like DMC or other 60 frame per second games out there, or just simply games even at 30 frames that just don't have as much input delay or lag. Now, needless to say, this is far from ideal for a title that's so heavily focused on action combat. Now, Push Square does say that they started to notice some kind of input lag while venturing further into the game for review purposes, but we were putting it down to the protagonist's long attack and recovery animations. Digital Foundry's findings make much more sense of this situation. Fortunately, Digital Foundry believes that Wukong's PS5 performance can be improved, so developer Game Science will hopefully grace us with a patch or two in the near future. So that's the thing with it, guys. So if you're wondering what is going on with that PlayStation 5 version of the game, like you feel like you hit that dodge button and it didn't come out, or you pressed the drink and it didn't come out. It was actually one time when I was playing the game and I pressed it like once and it didn't come out, so I pressed it again, and then it did it twice in terms of the drink. I sipped the drink twice and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on there? So it got to the point where I was like, you know what, enough is enough for me. I'm just gonna try out the PC version of the game. I did watch the Digital Foundry thing on it. I was like, okay, let me see how the PC version is. They did say that, hey, it has certain issues, but for the most part, you know, it's pretty good. And it's a night and day difference. I went on the PC version of the game. It took a while to download. I did everything, paid for it on Steam, all that good stuff, did benchmarks, ran where I thought would be good when it comes to what I want to do with the game. I think I had it on like high performance. I was getting around 70 frames per second on my rig, but the problem was that it was choppy when I was recording the footage, so I put a cap limiter to 60, so I just have it running right at 60 frames per second, and it was instantly noticeable when it comes to the inputs. It was instantly boom. As soon as you press the button, the move came out. As soon as you dodged, it came out. Anytime like you press something, it was so much more responsive and accurate and made for just a better playing game. I'm used to playing action games like Bayonetta and DMC and the old school God of War games, or even the newer God of War games. And when you play those games, it had a much faster response timing. There wasn't that type of input delay that you would get here with Black Myth Wukong on the PlayStation 5. Once again, you saw like, okay, we think it's running smooth, but it necessarily wasn't coming out to match that 60 frames that you think that you're seeing. So I think this explains so much with the game. But now that I'm playing the PC version of it and I've put a number of hours into it, Black Myth Wukong, while absolutely not perfect, especially with some of the boss battles and everything, I still feel that it's a fun game. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to do a full review of it or anything. I'm just going to enjoy it, and of course, I'll be covering the different news that comes out about the game when it comes to good or bad overall. It is worth playing if you like action games. But I will say this. There is a bit of a buyer's beware with the PlayStation 5 version of the game for right now, because you're not getting that super silky smooth experience from an action game at 60 frames that you would expect. Heck, I've even played 30 frames per second games that feel a bit better to play in terms of input delay. Like a game like Astral Chain, for example, definitely feels more smooth and better to play, even though it's actually running at 30 frames per second on the Switch. So right now, you're not necessarily getting that. Now, is it unplayable? Is it terrible? Is it the worst thing in the world? Absolutely not. It's still very playable and still fun on the PlayStation 5. Like, you can still pick it up and have some fun with it. But if you have a PC that's capable, I would absolutely recommend, for right now, the PC version of the game. Now, there is no physical right now at this point. People have been asking me about that. There's no physical version on PlayStation 5. Now, I was able to find an article talking about the physical editions of Black Myth Wukong, and they're not really physical editions of the game. It's just going to be a code in the box, because this article on IGN says, according to the developer, both the physical deluxe and collector's edition will come with digital activation codes for the digital deluxe edition of the game, but will not have a disc. So I don't know if they've changed their mind from then, but at this point, yeah, you're not actually getting a real physical version of the game on the PS5 when it does come out. So I do feel that if you have a PC and if you have a PlayStation 5, the PC version is the version to get. I was playing it on an Xbox Series controller, and it felt great to play overall with that. It was a lot smoother, and it looked great. It looked great, ran great. Like I said, not perfect by any means. I'm not saying that this is the greatest action game or anything like that, but I do feel that it's a very good game on the PC. And if you play it on PS5, you can still like it. You can still think it's good. I still thought that it was okay. But yeah, it's definitely going to eat your inputs, and it's absolutely not going to feel as smooth. And you might get hit when it comes to a boss when you swore that you dodged, or you might accidentally take an extra drink when you felt that you did something else, because it does eat those inputs, like Digital Foundry's talked about here, and of course Push Square is talked about when they first reviewed the game and saying, hey, something's wrong here. But now we actually have the technical breakdown to see exactly what's happening with Black Myth Wukong. But what do you guys think overall with it? Are you playing Black Myth Wukong? Do you plan on picking up the game at some point? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other videos right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.